guys, today we are very excited to have the president of Just for Laugh, Rickles. Let's go! So first want to start off by congratulating you on the success of Just for Laughs.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was it's an amazing, and I used to watch it when I was very little, very little. I used to watch it at my nana's house because she lives all the way in Montreal, and she just used to give me some pasta, sit me in front of the TV, and put on Just for Laughs.
And was it Just for Last Gags, the Candid Camera show, or the stand-up?
I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. I don't really remember it that well.
If you were that young, I would hope it was Just for Last Gags and not some adult stand-up. But I'm so glad that you got to watch what we do.
It was the pranks. They did a bunch of pranks.
That's it. Just for Last Gags. That's exactly it.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
It's a great show. And by the way, that show over the years has been seen by 11 billion people online.
Really?
Sorry, let's start again. Not 11 individual people, but it has had 11 million views. 11 billion views. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Produced by a couple of talented Montrealers.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So were you, or are you a funny guy, or do you just have a good sense of humor and a great judge of comedic talent?
Well, I think that you will hear from my peers I'm not funny, although I might think I am. No, listen, really my skill set is trying the best to judge talent and try to find people that I think have original point of views and something, interesting and different to say. One of the things we've always tried to do at Just for Laughs is not be boring. Find those comics that push some buttons, that do something different. And at absolutely the biggest curse, the biggest mistake you can make is be boring. So we're always looking to, find people that push the boundaries, but most importantly are just, funny folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how is it being the president of Just for Laughs? What were you when you found out that you got the job? Were you just what did you feel?
Well, listen, I have been there for so long. I really know not much else but Just for Laughs. I'm going into my 37th year at JFL. So, we're having our 40th anniversary this summer, and I've been a part of 37 of them. So I only know this. So the only place for me to go, unless I really blew it, was up. So one day they thought, I should be in charge of everything. And I couldn't have been more thrilled and excited about the challenge because I knew we could do so much great work and bring so much attention to the city of Montreal. And over time, all over the world, because we have festivals now, across Canada, in the US, Australia, and soon to be some other places.
And do you think there's going to be a festival in 2022?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to have a major event with all the funniest comics in the world from all over the world coming and celebrating our 40th this July.
So you began with JFL as a driver for the show's guests as a summer job. How did you get the job, and how important was it for the rest of your career?
Well, it was one of the most important things that ever happened to me. And, and I think first and foremost, an old friend of mine, Andy Nallman, who gave me my first break in the business outside of Just for Laughs, prior to Just for Laughs, told me that, hey, there's an opportunity at Just for Laughs to drive. That's the only job available, but it pays pretty well. And I think it's a good move for you to take that job if you're available. So I did take it. And, and I think the lesson learned there was really important. And that is that you never know where your break's going to come. And driving comedians and driving important industry folks is a very important, is a very useful way to build a Rolodex, to make contacts and to make contacts with people that might be able to help you in the future. When you drive someone 30 minutes from the airport and they know nothing about the city they're going to, you become their focus, even though you're just a little driver. You got 30 minutes of their attention, especially this is prior to people being on their phones the whole time. And they're asking you and where to eat and how do I get to the show tonight? And you become an important part of their experience. And, if you do your job well and you're friendly and you're generous with your time, they'll reciprocate. So, some of the people I picked up were some of the biggest agents in the business, and including the producer of David Letterman, who invited me to come and, to the show and take a tour of the show, and, was so appreciative of the treatment he got that he always offered me the outlet to call him if I needed something or I needed advice. And this is, I was in the business for 1 minute, and I had, a relationship with one of the two most important talk shows in the business, Letterman and, Tonight Show at that time. So, and that was just taking on a driver's job and doing the job well, but most importantly, engaging with someone appropriately, not taking too much time from them, not trying to overstep the boundaries, but also having an eye that there is more to gain here than just getting somewhere on time to a show or a dinner.
That's crazy. So why do you think Montreal's Just for Laughs festival became like the comedy festival of in the world?
Well, first and foremost, we were first. We were pretty well the first comedy festival out there. So we got a head start. And then, who doesn't want to be in Montreal in the summer?
Yeah.
I mean, you heard what Jimmy Kimmel said. And Jimmy Kimmel came to the festival because of JFL and fell in love with the city. And I was, I knew he felt strongly about Montreal, but to actually say it's his favorite city to visit is awesome. Look, the city's amazing, and the comedy fans are first class. And I think people love the bilingual nature of it. Our festival has a French and English piece. The city is bilingual. It feels like, maybe for Americans, Paris, closer to their, a version of Paris, but close by in North America. So it's different, it's appealing, and it's only got better because our city has just developed into an incredible place to visit with the caliber of restaurants, just the vibe of the city, especially in the summer with all the festivals, because, there's a festival approach that we go after on the tourism front. There's a very, very specific strategy for the city of Montreal is to promote itself as the city of festivals, and Just for Laughs is one of the key ones in the summer.
Yeah, Montreal is probably my favorite city.
You're close by. You got to come to visit Just for Laughs this summer. Come on.
Yeah, I want to, and I will. What does this festival mean to Montreal and the province of Quebec?
Well, I think that what the festival does brings a great amount of pride that the premier comedy event in the world is not in Hollywood or London or New York. It's in Montreal, Canada. I think that's a pretty cool thing. And what it also does is it brings tourists into the city. Something that will be even more important this summer to help revive the hotels and the restaurants and everything that's sort of been at a standstill through this pandemic. And then, we bring exposure. Think about it. I'm on your podcast talking about it. When the artists come to Montreal, your Kevin Hart's and you name it, with their huge social media followings, Kevin Hart, when he engages about JFL, a festival that launched his career, and he's very proud of his association with Montreal and Just for Laughs, he talks about it to his 150 million followers. So Montreal gets enormous exposure through all the traditional ways, press, television shows that we produce, but also on social, we can have up to 250, 300 million people following the comedians that are coming to one individual festival, all sharing content for a week at a time. If it's Neil Patrick Harris next to Dave Chappelle, next to Kevin Hart, all talking about how much fun they're having. Well, comedy fans around the world are being exposed to why Montreal is special and why Just for Laughs is a fantastic event, and one that they should attend one day, we hope.
So if you give me an estimate, how many people do you think go to the festival every year?
Well, listen, it all depends on the attendance outdoors, because our shows outdoors are for free. And that has, the weather has a huge impact, but we have done over 2 million in a big summer. So, maybe about 3 to 500,000 indoors and the rest outside. But, there's no festival in the world that has that attendance.
Wow, that's crazy. So I had John Stamos on on my podcast, and he spoke about Don Rickles. He talked about how special a man he was. What impact did he have on comedy?
Well, Don, listen, I will tell you that when we had the luxury of Don performing at our festival twice, and both times had a huge impact on our festival, let alone the comedy business. But what I will tell you, what was so impressive was all the comedians, when they found out he was hosting one of our shows, all of them campaigning to get on his show so they could meet him, because so many comedians admired him, and were inspired by him and wanted to, work with him. And, that's one of the great things that Just for Laughs can offer, is that, if you're on a gala at Place des Arts, you might be introduced by your comedy hero. And that's one of the things that makes Just for Laughs special, because especially if you're an up and coming comic. I mean, there were, comics that couldn't believe that Don Rickles was introducing them. 2 years earlier, Steve Martin introduced them, and that's just not something that happens every day. But it happens at Just for Laughs.
So what do you think the greatest part is about having Just for Laughs in Montreal?
I think the greatest part of it is that our comedy fans are awesome, and they're open, they're as open-minded to see a comedian from America as one from England, both coming with a different way of delivering their material and their style of comedy. They roll with what's in front of them. They're not stuck in their ways. They're open-minded. They're attentive. They're just a really good comedy audience.
At one point, you were a programmer and would scout comedians and decide if they were, a good fit for the show. What was that process like? And did you realize how easily you could launch someone's career?
Well, in the early years, I was out scouting around, and I have to be honest, I don't think I really know what I was doing. I think I figured it out on the fly, but over time, I think I got better. And yes, when we saw the type of deals that were being done at the festival, especially in the early 90s, when Tim Allen came to the festival and basically walked out with a deal to do Home Improvement, at that time, the biggest television show in the business. And then everyone realized, oh, if you go to Just for Laughs, you might get a deal. That changed everything for us. People came to JFL and left with a career, left with at least some momentum for their career if they did well, but some of them left well on their way to be some of the biggest names in the history of comedy, and, big paychecks to follow.
As a programmer and now as someone who has seen many comedians, what is it that you are looking for, and what makes a good comic?
Well, listen, I think because there's so much comedy out there, you're looking for originality. You're looking for someone that will come on stage and do something you haven't seen before, because that's hard to do. So I would say, we look for that point of view that differs from others, that just makes that person unlike anyone else. It's hard to do, by the way, hard to find, but when it happens, it's a special, special thing. And that's what my team looks for on a regular basis, because I'm not out there scouting anymore. We have an army of people out there, scouring the earth, both online and in person, looking for, the next Kevin Hart.
Yeah, Kevin Hart's pretty funny. You pull out a VHS cassette with a manager's name and phone number taped to it. After watching the tape, did you know you had found a star in Dave Chappelle?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You know what? There have been a couple of times where I've watched a VHS tape, let alone or a link or whatever. But at that time, obviously on VHS tape, it was completely obvious. There was no, this wasn't a difficult call. This was just watching, someone that was unlike anyone else I had seen. I think he was 18 at the time. And he, I talked to you about before his point of view and being original. Just Dave had a different approach. And what was great about Dave was it was funny to everyone. It was universal. It was smart. And it just made me laugh. And he had 2 separate 7-minute sets. I was happy to find 5 minutes from a new comic, but he did 2 perfect sets. And that's why I called the number on the tape and booked him immediately, because it was, anyone would have done the same thing.
COVID-19 changed the way we viewed comedy. It just wasn't the same watching the late night shows without an audience, but you had already begun using digital media before the outbreak. What was your vision at the time?
Well, look, we were hoping the pandemic was going to last a couple of months, but we started to get a feeling pretty quickly that that was not the case. And, and we had to look at everything coming down the line. First and foremost, we realized pretty quickly we're not going to be able to do a significant festival in person. We were hoping we could do something, but soon we realized we were going to be able to produce nothing in a major way, especially given Montreal is so much, just for last Montreal and all our festivals are so much about Canadians, but also Americans and Brits and comics from coming all over the world. And when we realized things were going to shut down, we started to work on what can we do first and foremost with the content that we produced over the years. Could we repurpose it for different manners to monetize that content, to put content out there for our fans? So we really worked on getting our content out online, on Facebook, on Instagram. We really bolstered our YouTube channels. That was the first thing. Then we started to look at all kinds of different shows we could do online. Facebook Live, Instagram Live. And, some weeks we had 2 to 3 shows from Los Angeles, from New York, trying to figure out a way to produce comedy for our fans during a pandemic. And we tried a whole bunch of different things. A lot of it worked quite nicely. But then we realized we had to take it up a notch and started to look at ways that we could shoot our TV shows differently. So what we did, because people were really nervous of traveling, we went to Toronto. We shot a series with John Doerr, where we worked primarily with comics from Toronto. And so we shot some productions there. We would go basically anywhere in Canada where there were comics, and comics we felt could provide a great show for our broadcasters. And we produced, I would say, under this pandemic, probably 7 different series for Bell, for CBC, and for our American partners at CW. So we just, we went and made the show that could be made under the conditions. Sometimes we had 50 people in a large theater. Sometimes we had 100 people in a 200-seater. We just made sure that we did it safely. We made sure the comedy proposition was great, and that we gave the comics the best opportunity to succeed, and also to employ them, because comics were suffering, especially in Canada. It was just very hard to make a living during the pandemic. So, this was a way for us to innovate by making our shows a little differently, and also, put a smile on people's faces.
So now we have rapid fire questions.
Sure.
You ready?
Yeah.
Who was your favorite comedian when you were my age? So like 12 about.
Boy, that's a good, it was probably Carol Burnett. I love the Carol Burnett show, and I've had the privilege of working with her in the last before the pandemic. And, I would say it was, at your age, it was probably Carol Burnett, because our whole family would sit there and watch that show, and we loved it. Soon after, I was a huge fan of Monty Python and SCTV. Those were the shows that we talked about the next day at school, because those are the shows that made us laugh. And Monty Python and SCTV were pretty racy in parts too for, for the age I was, but I just loved those shows. They had a huge impact on me. And I've had the honor with working with a lot of the cast members of both those shows.
Who is the funniest comedian you have ever seen?
I can't answer that because I could get in trouble. If I'll tell you some of the, my favorites over the years. One of my favorites early on, look, definitely, probably not a household name. His name was Bill Hicks. Bill was a comedian that had a great run in the early 90s, but unfortunately died of cancer at a very young age. And Bill was about to be, I think, one of the biggest comedy stars in the world. I think that Bill was probably right there. I always loved Jon Stewart, Ray Romano, obviously Dave, but so many. It's really, it's hard to mention them all.
Do comics come to you or do you chase the comics?
We chase a lot of comics, but a lot of comics come to us. Look, end of the day, we chase the big stars, but luckily for us, some of the stars do come to us because they love being at the festival, and some of them are very close friends of mine, so that's obviously helpful. But the up and coming comic, the comic that wants to be discovered, and there are thousands of them, are reaching out to us, their managers, their agents, themselves personally, and that's what my team does. It looks through the people that are reaching out. It looks for those comics to book the best festivals around the world.
What was your favorite ride during your driver's days with Just for Laughs?
That's a good question. Listen, one of my most interesting drives was I drove Jerry Lewis. Do you know who Jerry Lewis was?
No.
Okay, it's a very famous comedian. He was a little tricky, but he really sort of challenged me. He teased me the whole time, and he was also mad at one of the other performers. I'm not going to mention her name. That was also there. So I, when I would get out of the car and I drop Jerry off, this comedian would come to me and say, "Was Jerry rude about me?" And I had to say nothing, because I learned very early that what is said in the car stays in the car. Yeah.
Yes or no? No names needed. Have you ever passed up on a future star?
Oh, many times.
Yeah.
I made a number of mistakes, and I've had the guts to admit it a couple of times to those comics, because sometimes what happens when they need the booking and you don't book them, you really have. If they take it very personally, sometimes they hold it against you for most of their career, especially because their view is, when I needed you, you weren't there, and now you need me. Why would I come and work for you? So we have to turn people around at times. And the best way to do that is just be honest. Hey, we blew it. We missed you. It's on us, not you. We'd love to have you at the festival. If you don't want to come, we understand.
Which is the best comedy club in North America to scout talent?
Well, there's a number. I would say that my two favorites are the Comedy Cellar. I would say the Comedy Cellar in Gotham in New York City, and the Comedy Store in Los Angeles.
Have you ever developed like a fake laugh?
You know what? I have laughed just because I felt like I needed to, but most of the time I do not. And by the way, I don't laugh that often because I'm so, at times I sort of nod. People, sometimes it's just the nodding. It's just not a lot of people that make me laugh, but that's not on them. That's sort of just my style, because I've seen so much comedy. Yeah, I might not be the best audience.
Who was your inspiration early in your career?
You know what? I worked with a gentleman by the name of Andy Nallman, who hired me, who was a teacher of mine at school at CJEP. And he gave me an opportunity to work with him on some marketing projects, doing the public relations for them. And he was the guy that, at the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, opened the door for me at Just for Laughs. So I was pretty impressed with Andy and on how he, got things done, because it's really hard to book the festival and finance the festival in the early years. I mean, it's never been easy, but it was definitely harder then. And he just had a level of confidence that if we go and we take chances and we push the boundaries, and if we're not boring, success will come. And that was inspiring. I saw that if you went for it and you didn't play it safe, most of the time you win.
And finally, what piece of advice can you give kids like me with big dreams?
You know what? It's really simple. Go for it. Take risks. And you know what? One thing I'd also say to you too is really important. When you got a roof over your head, before you're paying for rent on your own, have a job or not a job, take the chances now. Take the chances. When you can, go to someone that you really want to work for and say, hey, you don't even have to pay me to come in and work for you. I just want the opportunity. Take the level of difficulty of entry down a level. I say that to people that want to get into the business in general, who want to do something like I'm doing. I say, go out there, offer your services for free. If someone's a decent human being, soon they'll find a way to pay you, especially if you're delivering. That happened to me. Just make it easy for them to hire you. Be present, be available, be flexible, and do what, use, what you're doing. You seem to have very much a dream of being in that seat at a later in your life, with more people listening. So what are you doing? You created your own opportunity, and look how well it's going. You could sit around waiting for someone to do things for you, or you grabbed it. You grabbed it. That's how you do it. Think about it, what you're going to have as a body of work when you want to go a more traditional route, or maybe you never go a traditional route. Maybe you'll finance your own broadcast business off of YouTube because people want to support you. You're going to have some fans now and supporters from, Jimmy Kimmel to John Stamos to me. I'm there if you ever need any help or advice or open a door. So just go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we've come to the end of our interview. Thank you so much for joining. It was an honor having you.